She fed a wounded Indian. The next day, her house was surrounded by many of them. Emily Parker let out a heavy sigh as she gazed at the horizon of the small town of Clear Springs, nestled in the heart of Montana. At 32, the red-haired teacher had left Chicago in search of a fresh start after a painful divorce and the loss of her job in the city. That was when she noticed strange movement near the creek that ran behind her property. Approaching cautiously, Emily found a man lying among the tall plants. His dark skin and long black hair revealed his Native American heritage. He was wounded, in the leg and breathing heavily. "Oh my, are you all right?" Emily asked, knowing the question was foolish given the obvious situation. The man only groaned, trying to move away as she drew near. His eyes showed both distrust and pain. "I won't hurt you, I want to help," she said, making gestures to show her peaceful intentions. With great effort, and despite the man's initial resistance, Emily managed to support him and bring him to her house. The 100-yard walk felt endless. Inside the small wooden house she had rented just 2 months prior, she improvised a bed on the living room sofa. The wound on his leg didn't seem deep, but it was inflamed. Emily cleaned it with warm water and the first aid supplies she had at home. The man watched her every move with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. "You need to eat something to regain your strength," Emily said, more to herself than to him, unsure if he even understood English. In the kitchen, she prepared a nourishing broth with vegetables from her small garden. As she cooked, she wondered what her neighbors would say if they knew she was sheltering a stranger from the Lakota tribe. In Clear Springs, relations with the local native communities were at best distant, at worst hostile. When she returned to the living room with a wooden bowl of broth and some grains, she found the man sitting up, alert, as if assessing escape. "Saroots, it's just food. It'll help you get stronger," she said, offering the bowl. The man hesitated, but the aroma must have stirred his hunger. He accepted the bowl and cautiously tasted the contents. After a few seconds, he began eating more eagerly. "My name is Emily," she said, pointing to herself. "Makya," he replied, surprising her by speaking in English, though with a heavy accent. Emily smiled, feeling she had broken the first barrier. "Does your tribe know you're here? They must be worried." Makya lowered his eyes. "My people. Waiting." Communication was limited, but Emily understood he needed to return to his village. Still, his wound and exhaustion made it clear he needed rest first. "You can stay here tonight. Tomorrow, if you're better, I can help you get back to your village." Makya gave a slight nod. During the night, Emily noticed he had developed a fever. She spent hours placing cool cloths on his forehead, worried about infection. By dawn, exhausted, she fell asleep in the armchair beside the sofa. When she woke to the first rays of sunlight, Makya was gone. On the table, a small carved wooden amulet with symbols she didn't recognize seemed to have been left as thanks. Emily felt both relief and worry. Had he made it back to his village safely? Had his wound healed enough? These questions lingered as she prepared her breakfast. Then she heard it. First a distant murmur that gradually grew louder. Then footsteps and voices surrounding her house. Her heart raced. She approached the window, and what she saw froze her in place. Dozens of Native Americans, men, women, and children, stood silently encircling her home. "Oh my God," she whispered, feeling panic rise in her chest. The Native Americans didn't seem aggressive, but their sheer numbers were intimidating. Emily took a deep breath, trying to steady the trembling in her hands. She grabbed the amulet left by Makya and, summoning all her courage, opened the front door. The silence was absolute. Every pair of eyes turned toward her. Among them, Emily recognized Makya, who now looked stronger and stood without difficulty. Beside him, an older man with a weathered face adorned with traditional markings stepped forward. "You saved my son," the man said in clear English, surprising Emily. "Makya is the future of our people. Our gratitude knows no bounds." Emily's legs nearly gave way with relief. "I only did what anyone would do," she replied, though she knew that wasn't true in Clear Springs. "No," the man said firmly. "Not just anyone. Many in town fear us, hate us. You opened your home, your heart. That is rare. It was then Emily noticed several of the Native Americans carried baskets filled with fruits, medicinal herbs, and handmade crafts. "We've come to bring gifts and offer our friendship," the man continued. "I am Running Bear, leader of the Lakota people. This land where you live was once all ours, before the white men came." As Emily tried to process what was happening, she noticed movement on the road leading to her house. Curious neighbors had begun gathering in the distance, watching the unusual scene. Among them, she spotted Old Bill, the owner of the local general store, and Mrs. Gossip, the town's official busybody. She could already imagine the rumors spreading before lunch. "Please come inside," Emily invited, aware of the disapproving stares she was now receiving. "Let's talk more in private." Running Bear and a few of the elders accepted, while the others remained in the yard, curiously examining the plants Emily grew. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It helps us newcomers a lot. Now, back to the story. Inside the house, Emily listened as Running Bear explained his community's struggles. Makya had been sent to gather medicinal herbs that only grew near the creek, but was attacked by a group of illegal hunters who frequented the area. He managed to escape, but was injured in the process. "Our people face hard times," Running Bear said, sorrow in his voice. "The reservation where we're confined has few resources. The water grows scarcer each season. Our children fall ill." Emily felt a lump in her throat. In the few weeks since arriving in Clear Springs, she'd already seen how the Native Americans were treated when they came to town, with suspicion, disdain, and sometimes outright hostility. "I'm a teacher," she said. "I came to work at the public school. Maybe I can help somehow, teach the children." Running Bear's eyes brightened. That would be a blessing. Our children must learn the ways of the modern world without losing our traditions. The conversation was interrupted by sharp knocks at the door. When Emily opened it, she found Mayor Thompson, the town's deputy mayor, accompanied by two men she didn't recognize. His expression was a mix of irritation and concern. "Mrs. Parker, what is the meaning of this?" he asked, gesturing toward the Native Americans in the yard. "You're causing a disturbance in the community." "They're my guests, Mayor Thompson," Emily replied firmly, though her heart raced. "They're simply paying me a visit to express their gratitude." The mayor looked past her and saw Running Bear and the others inside. "You don't yet understand how things work here. These Indians belong on their reservation. When they come to town, they cause trouble." Emily felt her face flush with indignation. "What problems? They're just on my property in peace." "That's not the issue," interrupted one of the men accompanying Mayor Thompson. He wore a suit far too expensive for local standards and carried an air of authority. "I'm Richard Blackwood, representing Clear River Mining. We're developing an important project for the region, and these natives have been causing delays with baseless protests." Emily sensed a presence beside her and realized Running Bear had stepped forward. "Your papers are fake, white man," the native leader said calmly but firmly. "The land you want to destroy has been sacred to us for generations." Richard shot Running Bear a disdainful look. "This is already being settled in court, and I suggest you don't involve yourself in matters that don't concern you, Mrs. Parker. The public school values teachers who respect the community's harmony." The veiled threat didn't go unnoticed. Emily hadn't been in town long and her contract was still on probation, but something inside her refused to bow to the injustice she was witnessing. "I appreciate the concern, gentlemen, but as I said, these are my guests, and I intend to visit their village to learn more about their customs and, if possible, help with the children's education." Mayor Thompson's face reddened. "You're making a mistake, Mrs. Parker, a mistake that could cost you dearly." After the men left, casting threatening glances, Emily felt the weight of her own words. What was she doing? She had just arrived in town, needed that job, and knew no one who could help if things went wrong. Makya approached her, sensing her distress. "No need help if it brings trouble for you," he said, struggling with English. Emily looked at him, at Running Bear, at the native children playing in her yard, and made her decision. "I'll help. It's the right thing to do." In the weeks that followed, Emily's life changed completely. As promised, She began visiting the Lakota village on weekends, bringing books and school supplies. The children welcomed her eagerly, hungry to learn. In return, she was introduced to traditional knowledge, medicinal plants, ancestral stories, crafting techniques. She met Medicine Woman, the tribe's healer, and Makya's mother, who slowly became her friend and mentor. The elder, with her silver hair and hands wrinkled by time, held deep knowledge of the local flora. "This plant," Medicine Woman said, showing a small herb with serrated leaves, "cures fever better than any pharmacy medicine." Emily absorbed each lesson with fascination, jotting everything down in a journal she'd started keeping. Meanwhile, in Clear Springs, her reputation deteriorated quickly. Parents began complaining at school, saying they didn't want their children taught by someone who mixed with Indians. On the street, she received disapproving looks. At Old Bill's store, the service turned cold and distant. Principal Wilson called her in for a serious talk. "Emily, I have to be frank. I'm under a lot of pressure. Parents are unhappy. Her deputy mayor has called several times." Principal Wilson seemed genuinely uncomfortable. "I admire your humanitarian spirit, but this is a small town with a provincial mindset. People aren't ready for, well, your friendship with the natives." "I'm just teaching children to read and write, Principal Wilson," Emily replied, trying to stay calm. "I don't see how that's a problem." "The problem isn't what you're doing, it's who you're doing it with," the principal sighed. "And there's the matter of the mining company. It's an important investment for the town, jobs, progress. Mayor Thompson told me you've been encouraging the natives to resist the project. I'm just helping them understand their rights. The documents the mining company submitted have clear irregularities." Principal Wilson adjusted her glasses, visibly uncomfortable. "Emily, I'll be direct. Your probation period ends in 2 weeks. If things continue like this, I'm not sure I can renew your contract." The threat hung in the air like a heavy cloud. Emily left the school feeling the weight of the world on her shoulders. When she got home, she found an anonymous letter under her door. "Leave while you still can. This is no place for friends of Indians." That night, alone in her house, Emily cried. She questioned her choices, thought about giving up, about requesting a transfer to another town. Sitting at the kitchen table with her head in her hands, her eyes landed on the amulet Makya had left behind. Next to it was a colorful drawing, made by one of the children from the village, a figure with red hair surrounded by small smiling faces. Just then, her phone rang. It was Michael, a young lawyer she'd met recently during one of her trips to the neighboring town, where she'd been gathering school supplies for the Lakota children. "Emily, I found something important. Those documents you showed me from the mining company, they're definitely fraudulent. I found the original records at the county clerk's office. The land they want to exploit was recognized as indigenous, ancestral territory in 1987. A spark of hope ignited in Emily's chest. "Does that mean we can stop the mining company?" "With the right evidence and a strong case, yes. But it won't be easy. They have money and influence. Are you sure you want to go through with this?" Emily looked again at the children's drawing and the amulet. Absolutely. The next morning, when she arrived at school, she immediately sensed something was wrong. The students stared at her curiously, whispering among themselves. In the teacher's lounge, silence fell as she entered. Principal Wilson was waiting with a grave expression. "Emily, I need to speak with you, in private." Inside the principal's office, along with her, stood Mayor Thompson and a man she didn't recognize, dressed in an impeccable suit. "This is Attorney James Sullivan, the town's legal counsel," Principal Wilson introduced, avoiding Emily's gaze. "Ms. Parker," Attorney Sullivan began in a monotone voice, "we're here to inform you that your contract with Clear Springs Municipal School will not be renewed after your probation period. Additionally, we've received a formal complaint from the owner of the property you're renting, citing violation of residential use terms due to unauthorized gatherings." "Unauthorized gatherings?" Emily repeated, disbelieving. "Are you talking about the Lakota visits?" "The lease agreement clearly states strictly residential use," the lawyer continued impassively. "The landlord requests that you vacate the property within 30 days. Emily felt her blood boil. "This is blatant discrimination. You're punishing me for helping marginalized people." Mayor Thompson cleared his throat, visibly uneasy. Miss Parker, no one here has anything against the Indians, but they have their place and we have ours. You're upsetting a balance that's worked for years." "Worked?" Emily asked bitterly. "They live in terrible conditions, without proper education or healthcare, while you try to take the little land they have left." "You're being emotional," Attorney Sullivan interjected. "We're simply following legal protocols. If you wish to dispute the decision, you're free to seek legal representation." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us newcomers a lot. Now, back to the story. Emily left the meeting devastated, but with renewed determination. In the hallway, she ran into Tyler, one of her brightest students and the son of the town pharmacist. "Miss Parker, is it true you're leaving?" he asked, his eyes brimming with tears. "Who told you that, Tyler? Everyone's saying it. My dad said you're teaching the Indians how to sue the mining company and that it'll make the town lose a lot of money." Emily knelt to meet the boy at eye level. "Tyler, do you remember that lesson on human rights? About how everyone deserves to be treated with respect and dignity?" The boy nodded. "I'm just helping people whose rights are being threatened. That's not wrong, is it?" "No, Miss Parker. You always say we should stand up for those who need help." Emily smiled, touched by the child's pure reasoning. "Exactly. And no, I'm not leaving. At least not without a fight." That afternoon, as she left the school, Emily spotted Makia waiting discreetly on the corner. Her heart raced with worry. His presence there alone could be dangerous, given the current mood in town. "Makia, what are you doing here?" she asked, glancing around to make sure no one was watching. "Big trouble," he said urgently. "Men with machines at the border of the sacred land. They started today." A chill ran down Emily's spine. Clear River. Mining was moving faster than they'd expected, likely trying to create a done deal before the fraudulent paperwork could be challenged. "I'll grab my things at home and meet you at the village," she said firmly. When she got home, however, an unpleasant surprise awaited her. The door had been forced open, and the inside was ransacked. Her books, papers, and the journal where she recorded traditional Lakota knowledge were scattered across the floor. On the wall, someone had scrawled in red paint, "Indian lover, get out." Emily's legs nearly gave way. She sat on the couch amid the mess, trying to steady her trembling hands. The fear she'd kept at bay finally caught up to her. She was alone in a hostile town, about to lose her job and home, up against a powerful corporation. The phone rang, startling her. It was Michael, the attorney. "Emily, I got the injunction. The judge ordered an immediate halt to all mining activity until the land dispute is resolved. I'm on my way to Clear Springs to deliver the notice." The news should have cheered her, but she knew the court order would only work if it could be served in time. "Michael, they've already started. They have machines at the reservation border right now. We have to act fast. I'm an hour away. Try to stop them somehow until I get there." After hanging up, Emily tried to gather her thoughts. She needed to warn Running Bear and the others, but she also needed help in town. Surprisingly, her gaze fell on Principal Wilson's number. Despite everything, the woman seemed principled, even if her position forced her to bend to local pressure. To her surprise, Principal Wilson listened carefully to her explanation. "Emily, you're getting into something much bigger than you realize," the principal said wearily. "But you're right about the mining company. My brother worked for them in another state, and what they did there was terrible. Environmental destruction, broken promises." There was a pause. "What do you need?" "Witnesses. Townspeople who can document what's happening. If the company ignores the injunction, we'll need proof. I'll see what I can do, but be careful, Emily. These people don't play around." With a small backpack holding water, her phone, and the digital camera she used for school projects, Emily headed to the Lakota reservation. The path was long, about 5 kilometers along a dirt road that wound through farms before reaching the marked area. When she finally spotted the boundary of the reservation, her heart sank. 3 large tractors had already cleared a vast stretch of native vegetation. A group of workers from the mining company, wearing yellow helmets and vests, supervised the operation. On the other side, a group of Lakota tribespeople, including Running Bear, watched helplessly. Emily approached the indigenous group first. The injunction was granted, she told Running Bear. An attorney is on his way with the official document. They have to stop immediately. The relief on the elder leader's face was palpable, but soon gave way to concern. They won't stop, just because a piece of paper says so. We've already tried talking, but the white man in the red helmet has a gun. Emily looked in the direction he indicated and recognized Richard Blackwood, the mining company representative who had threatened her at her home. He was shouting orders to the machine operators, gesturing forcefully. Summoning all her courage, Emily walked toward the tractors, holding her phone out to record. "Gentlemen," she shouted, trying to be heard over the engine noise, "I need to inform you that there's a court order suspending all activity in this area until the land dispute is resolved." Richard turned sharply at the sound of her voice, his face twisted in fury. "You again! This is an authorized operation. Get out of here before I call security." "A court order has just been issued," Emily repeated, still recording. "The attorney is on his way with the document. If you continue, you'll be violating a court order, and I'm documenting everything." Richard stepped forward threateningly, but stopped when he noticed the camera pointed at him. "Turn that off," he ordered. "You're on private property. You don't have permission to film." "This is a demarcated indigenous land, not private property," Emily countered, "and I'm exercising my right to document a potential violation of the law." The tension was palpable. The tractors had stopped and the operators watched the scene, waiting for instructions. The indigenous people, emboldened by Emily's stance, began slowly moving closer. Then the unexpected happened. 3 vehicles appeared on the road. Michael's car, the attorney, an environmental police unit he'd apparently managed to call, and, to Emily's complete surprise, the school van driven by Mr. Jenkins, the municipal school's driver. From the van stepped Principal Wilson, some teachers, parents, and even a few older students, including Tyler and his friends. They all carried phones and cameras. "What is this?" Richard asked, momentarily losing his composure as the group approached. "They're witnesses," Emily replied, feeling a surge of gratitude and emotion. "Citizens of Clear Springs who don't want their town associated with illegal and immoral acts." Michael stepped forward with an official envelope in hand. "Mr. Richard Blackwood, I'm Michael Rowe, attorney. I have here a court order from the state judiciary mandating the immediate suspension of all activity in the disputed area until the legal process is concluded." Richard snatched the document with barely contained rage, skimmed it, and crumpled the paper. "This means nothing. We've already invested millions in this project. Our lawyers will overturn this injunction by tomorrow." "Maybe," Michael conceded. "But until then, any activity here will be considered contempt of court, not to mention environmental damage on indigenous land, which carries severe penalties. The footage being recorded will serve as evidence." The mining representative looked around. He was surrounded by witnesses, cameras, and now environmental police officers who had begun inspecting the cleared land. With a sharp gesture, he ordered, "The workers, pack everything up, we're leaving for now." As the tractors and workers withdrew, the tense atmosphere gave way to a strange euphoria. The indigenous people approached the residents of Clear Springs, cautiously at first, then with growing confidence. For many citizens of the small town, it was the first time they had interacted directly with the Lakota. Principal Wilson walked up to Emily. "We need to talk," the principal said with a serious expression. Emily braced herself for another scolding. "I know I risked my job, but—" "Actually," Principal Wilson interrupted, "I wanted to apologize for what I said in the office, for giving in to pressure. It wasn't right." Emily blinked in surprise. "What made you change your mind?" "Tyler," the principal replied with a small smile. "He organized a petition among the students asking for you to stay as their teacher. He said you taught them that staying silent in the face of injustice makes you complicit." Emily felt her eyes well up. "He really said that?" "Word for word, and it made me realize that as an educator I was setting a terrible example. So, your contract will be renewed if you still want to work with us." That evening, something extraordinary happened in Clear Springs. Running Bear invited everyone present to visit the village. After a moment of hesitation, most accepted. "Emily, watched in awe as town children played with Lakota children, as teachers spoke with tribal elders, as years of prejudice began to dissolve in just a few hours of shared time. Medicine Woman organized a small ceremony to thank them for their support. She offered an aromatic herbal tea and told stories about her people's origins, their sacred connection to the land, and the wisdom passed down through generations. For a moment, Emily let herself believe a new era could begin there, that bridges could be built, that understanding could replace fear and distrust. But she knew the road would be long. The mining company would surely return with new arguments and tactics. There would still be resistance in town, many conflicting interests, deep-rooted prejudices. As she watched the sunset paint the sky gold over the village, Makya approached her. "Thank you," he said in his improving English, "for not being afraid, for believing." "It was the least I could do," Emily replied. "You've taught me so much, in such a short time." "My father says you have a Lakota soul," Makya remarked with a smile. "Maybe in another life." Emily smiled back, feeling a connection that transcended words or cultures. Who knows? What matters is that we're here now, fighting together. That night, returning to her still messy home after the invasion, Emily felt no fear. Instead, she felt strangely at peace. As she cleaned and rearranged her things, she found the small carved wooden amulet Makya had given her and smiled. Somehow, that simple object had changed the course of her life, and perhaps the small town of Clear Springs. 3 months had passed since the confrontation at the reserve's border. Life in Clear Springs had changed in subtle but meaningful ways. The lawsuit against the mining company was still in court, but they had temporarily suspended operations in the area. Michael, the attorney who had helped with the injunction, visited town regularly, working pro bono to protect the Lakota community's rights. At the public school, Emily had launched a special project. Once a week, Lakota elders visited classrooms to share traditional knowledge, stories, and crafts. In return, twice a month, she and other volunteer teachers went to the village for supplementary lessons. To her surprise, the project had gained support from people who had previously opposed any interaction with the indigenous communities. Old Bill, the owner of the general store, now sold indigenous crafts in his shop, creating an additional source of income for the Lakota community. Mrs. Gossip, the town's busybody, had become an enthusiast of Medicine Woman's herbal remedies, promoting their benefits to anyone who would listen. Of course, it wasn't all sunshine and roses. Mayor Thompson, the deputy mayor, still kept his distant and suspicious stance. Richard Blackwood, the representative from Clear River Mining, occasionally showed up in town, casting threatening glances in Emily's direction. Some of the more conservative townsfolk still muttered about Indians invading the town whenever groups of Lakota appeared on the streets. But the balance had shifted. Where there had once been open hostility, there was now at least cautious tolerance. And for many, especially the children, a genuine curiosity and respect were blossoming. Emily had finally found a new place to live after her previous landlord refused to renew her lease. Luckily, Mrs. Davis, an elderly widow who lived alone in a large house on the outskirts of town, offered her the small guest house on her property. "I always thought it was a waste to leave that space empty," the white-haired woman had said. "And after what you've done for the Lakota, well, let's just say my late husband would have approved. He always said those lands rightfully belonged to them." The guest house was smaller than her previous home, but it had a spacious backyard where Emily began cultivating a medicinal garden with seeds and seedlings donated by Medicine Woman. The Lakota healer became a frequent visitor, spending long afternoons teaching Emily about the healing properties of each plant. During one of these visits, as Medicine Woman sorted leaves for an infusion, she said something that would stay with Emily forever. "You fed my son when he was in need. Today, you feed our people with knowledge and courage. Some say it was a coincidence that Running Bear fell near your home that day. I say it was the Great Spirit who guided his steps." Emily smiled, remembering the fear she had felt when she first found Running Bear wounded, and later when she saw her home surrounded by dozens of indigenous people. Sometimes the best things in life start with a scare, don't they? Medicine Woman nodded, her ancient eyes gleaming with wisdom. "Fear only has the power we give it. You chose courage even when afraid. That is true strength. The friendship between Emily and Running Bear also flourished, though in a restrained and respectful way. He had become an important mediator between the village and the town, improving his English and helping translate complex concepts between the two cultures. Occasionally, he brought small gifts for Emily: a beaded bracelet, a finely woven basket, a wooden figurine. In return, Emily helped him understand official documents, laws, and the bureaucratic processes needed to secure his people's rights. Together, they were building a bridge between two worlds that had remained separated by fear and misunderstanding for far too long. One afternoon, as Emily graded papers in her small backyard, she heard the sound of a vehicle approaching. It was a dusty Jeep, from which a middle-aged man stepped out, carrying a briefcase and a professional camera. "Ms. Emily Parker?" he asked, approaching with a friendly smile. "My name is Robert Miller, a reporter with the National News. We're doing a story on indigenous communities and their relationships with neighboring towns. Your name came up several times as a key figure here in Clear Springs." Emily felt a mix of surprise and apprehension. Had her story really spread that far? "I'm not sure I'm the best person to talk about this," she replied modestly. "The real protagonists are the Lakota, and we'll speak with them too," Robert assured. "But from what I understand, it was your intervention that changed the local dynamic. I'd like to hear your version of the story." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to it. Emily hesitated. She wasn't seeking personal recognition and feared media exposure might disrupt the fragile balance they were building in Clear Springs. Before deciding, "I need to consult Running Bear and the other Lakota leaders," she finally said. "This isn't just my story to tell." The reporter seemed impressed by her response. "Of course, I completely understand. In fact, this only confirms what we've heard about you. Please take your time. We'll be in town for a few days." After the journalist left, Emily immediately sent a message to Makia, explaining the situation. He replied that he'd speak with his father and the other elders and would bring an answer the next day. That night, Emily struggled to sleep. The prospect of national coverage brought both opportunities and risks. On one hand, it could draw attention to the Lakota's cause, pressure Clear River mining, and inspire other communities. On the other, it might attract unwanted attention, heighten local tensions, or even provoke retaliation. By morning, Makia appeared at her door, accompanied not only by Running Bear but by nearly the entire village council of elders. Emily immediately sensed the solemnity of the visit and invited them inside. In her small annex, the Lakota leaders sat in a circle on the living room floor. Running Bear, as always, spoke first. "Emily, our friend, we've discussed this television man at length. Some fear showing our faces to the country will bring more trouble. Others believe it's time for the world to know our struggle." The elders debated among themselves for nearly an hour, alternating between English and their native language. Emily watched silently, respecting their traditional decision-making process. Finally, Running Bear raised his hand, signaling they'd reached a consensus. "We've decided you should speak with the television man," he announced. "But we ask that one of us always be present to ensure our voice is heard too. Makia will be our representative." Emily nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility. "I promise to do my best, so the story is told with respect and truth." In the days that followed, Robert Miller and his small team filmed extensively. They interviewed Emily in her home, Makia and Running Bear in the village, Principal Wilson at the school, and several townsfolk in Clear Springs Central Square. They documented the intercultural classes, medicine woman's healing practices, and the abandoned tractors at the reservation's border. To Emily's surprise, many townspeople who had once remained neutral, or even hostile, now openly expressed support for the Lakota. Mr. Jenkins, the school bus driver who had taken residents to the confrontation, proudly recounted how he'd been part of the day Clear Springs chose the right side of history. Even old Bill, the general store owner, initially reluctant, now spoke enthusiastically about how indigenous crafts had become a draw for tourists visiting the area. "I always thought they should stay on their land and we in town," he admitted to the camera with a mix of shame and honesty. "But Mrs. Parker made me see we were all losing with that separation." On the other hand, Mayor Thompson refused to give an interview, as did Richard Blackwood and any representative from Clear River Mining. Some residents still closed their doors when the news team approached, showing that divisions persisted, even if weakened. On the eve of the television crew's departure, Robert invited Emily and Makia to watch a preliminary version of the report. On the journalist's small laptop, they saw how the story had been put together. It began with aerial footage of the reservation and the town, followed by the narrative of Emily and Makia's meeting, the community's mobilization, the confrontation at the border, and finally the ongoing educational projects. "What do you think?" Robert asked after the screening. "Did we capture the essence of the story?" Emily looked at Makia, who remained silent, thoughtful. "It's beautiful," he finally said, choosing his words carefully. "But something's missing." "What?" the reporter asked, genuinely interested. "It shows too much of the past, the struggle, but it doesn't show the future we want to build. It's not just about stopping the mining company, it's about living together, respecting the land." Robert considered Makia's words for a moment. "You're right. We can make some adjustments before the final edit. Maybe end with a reflection on the future, about the model of coexistence you're building here." After the news team left, life in Clear Springs returned to its normal rhythm, or what was now considered normal, an imperfect but ever-evolving coexistence. The lawsuit against the mining company continued, with hearings scheduled for the coming months. Meanwhile, the educational project expanded, with more teachers and volunteers involved. 2 weeks after the journalist's visit, the report aired. Emily gathered with Makia, Running Bear, and other members of the Lakota community at Mrs. Davis's house, whose television was large enough for a group viewing. When their images appeared on the screen, a reverent silence filled the room. The Boom report, now in its final version, had clearly incorporated Makia's suggestion. Beyond narrating the conflict and resistance, it spent considerable time explaining the vision for the future being built in Clear Springs, a coexistence based on mutual respect, knowledge exchange, and environmental protection. The closing scene showed a group of children, both native and non-native, planting native trees in the area where tractors had torn down vegetation months earlier. Over this image, the reporter's voice concluded, "In Clear Springs, a small town in rural Montana, a powerful lesson is being written. When bridges replace walls, when dialogue overcomes prejudice, entire societies can transform. And sometimes it all begins with a simple act of humanity, offering food to the hungry, shelter to the vulnerable, respect to those who have always been marginalized." When the report ended and the lights came on, many in the room had tears in their eyes. Running Bear slowly stood, leaning on his traditional staff, and turned to Emily. "This story now belongs not just to us, but to the entire country. You helped us find our voice. We will never forget." In the days following the national broadcast, Clear Springs experienced a sudden wave of attention. Journalists from other outlets arrived, wanting to delve deeper into the story. Representatives from environmental and indigenous rights NGOs reached out, offering support. Tourists began arriving, curious to see the small town where natives and non-natives were building a new model of coexistence. The most immediate impact, however, was on the legal case. A week after the report aired, the mining company officially announced the suspension of its exploration project in the region, citing a strategic reassessment of investments. Though they wouldn't admit defeat, it was clear the reputational cost had grown too high after the national exposure. For the Lakota community, it was a significant victory, though just one battle in a much longer war to preserve their rights and land. For Emily, it confirmed that her instincts had been right from the start. By feeding a wounded native man, by opening her door to a marginalized community, she wasn't just doing what was right. She was planting the seeds of something far greater. One particularly hot afternoon, as Emily helped medicine woman sort herbs in her backyard, the elder shared an old Lakota legend. "Our ancestors say that long ago, when the world was still young, there was a great darkness among the people. No one trusted anyone. Everyone lived in isolation, afraid. Then a young woman found a wounded bird, and instead of ignoring it, she took it home and cared for it until it could fly again. In gratitude, the bird, who was really a spirit of nature, gave her a special seed. "Plant it," the spirit said, "and from it will grow a tree whose fruit will feed not just the body, but understanding among the people." Medicine. Woman paused, studying Emily's face before continuing. "You are like that woman in the legend, Emily. You found Running Bear wounded and fed not just his body, but planted a seed of understanding. And now look how many fruits are growing." Emily smiled, touched by the comparison, but also aware the work had only just begun. Generations of prejudice wouldn't vanish overnight. The greed for native lands wouldn't stop with a single retreat. "It's a beautiful story, medicine woman, but we still have so much to do." The elder nodded, her eyes revealing the wisdom of decades. "Yes, the path is long, but now we walk together, no longer separated by fear." As the seasons changed, the educational project expanded further. With support from organizations that had learned of their story through the news, Emily established a permanent intercultural school at the edge of town and the reservation. There, children and young people from both communities studied the standard curriculum, but also learned native history, sustainable practices, medicinal herbs, and traditional crafts. Tyler, the student who had organized the petition to keep Emily as their teacher, now led a youth club dedicated to environmental projects. Under the guidance of Lakota elders, the group had begun reforesting degraded areas with native species, creating an ecological corridor that gradually reconnected isolated fragments of the forest. Running Bear, in turn, had become an important, emerging leader among his people. With improved English and a growing understanding of the legal system, he now represented Lakota interests in regional and even national forums. His friendship with Emily remained strong, though sometimes complicated by unspoken expectations and cultural differences. There were moments of tension, misunderstandings, occasional steps back, but they always found their way back to mutual understanding, to the trust they had built since that first meeting by the creek. One evening, during a village celebration marking a year since the mining company's retreat, Running Bear found Emily stargazing, away from the bonfires and music. "The sky is the same for all of us," he remarked, joining her in contemplation. "My people believe the stars are our ancestors watching over us." "It's a beautiful belief," Emily replied. "In every culture, people look to the sky for guidance, hope, connection to something greater." They stood in silence for a moment, absorbing the peace of the night and the distant sound of traditional chants. "Emily," Makia finally said, "my father and the elders have made a decision. They want to formally welcome you as a friend of the Lakota people. It's an honor rarely given to outsiders. There will be a special ceremony at the next full moon." The teacher felt a wave of emotion rush through her. "Makia, I don't know what to say. It's an honor I'm not sure I deserve." He smiled, his eyes reflecting the starlight. "You fed a wounded Indian," he said, repeating words that had become almost a mantra between them. "And when your home was surrounded by many of us, you didn't shut the door, you opened it. And with it you opened a new path for everyone." The ceremony, held under the silver light of the full moon, was a solemn and moving event. Emily was dressed in traditional Lakota garments, received symbolic body paintings, and was given a new name in the native language, Morning Star, meaning the one who brings light. Running Bear led the ritual, explaining to those present, not just members of the tribe but also residents of Clear Springs who had been specially invited, the significance of the moment. Formal friendship between peoples is like planting a sacred tree. Its roots dig deep into the soil of our shared history. Its branches stretch into the future, offering shade and fruit for generations to come. Morning Star, the woman we know as Emily, planted this tree when she opened her door and her heart to us. Today we officially recognize what we already knew in our hearts. She is part of the Lakota family. After the ceremony, as celebrations continued around the bonfires, Emily found a moment to speak privately with Running Bear. "I'm at a loss for words to thank you for this honor," she said, still emotional. The old leader smiled serenely. It's not just an honor, Morningstar. It's also a responsibility. Now you are a bridge between two worlds, just like my son Makya. And bridges bear the weight of those who cross from one side to the other. I'll do my best to be worthy of this trust, Emily promised. I know you will, Running Bear replied. And always remember, what you started here in Clear Springs is like a stone thrown into a lake. The ripples spread, touching places you may never see. The Lakota leader's words proved prophetic. In the years that followed, the model of intercultural cooperation developed in Clear Springs inspired similar initiatives in other regions. The school founded by Emily became a national benchmark for Indigenous education, attracting educators from across the country eager to replicate its methodology. The small town in rural Montana, once known only for its agricultural output, gained a new identity as a symbol of respectful integration between different cultures. Indigenous crafts, medicinal herbs, and jointly developed ecotourism projects began generating sustainable prosperity that benefited both the urban community and the village. Of course, not all problems were solved. There were still resistances, occasional conflicts, and external threats. Clear River Mining, though defeated in that particular battle, continued exploiting other areas of the region. Politicians with shady interests occasionally tried to undermine the progress made. State bureaucracy often created obstacles for innovative projects that didn't fit into predefined categories. But with each challenge, the alliance forged between Emily, the Lakota, and the progressive residents of Clear Springs grew stronger and more resilient. Where there had once been fear and division, there was now an interwoven social fabric, capable of withstanding pressures and adapting to new circumstances. On a spring morning 5 years after her initial encounter with Makya, Emily received an unexpected visit. Her ex-husband, Charles, appeared at her door, visibly aged and embarrassed. Emily, I know showing up like this is a surprise, but I saw the report about you and the Lakota a few years ago. It took me a while to gather the courage, but I needed to come in person to say I'm proud of what you've built here. The meeting was awkward, filled with painful memories and unspoken words. But Emily, now more confident in herself and her place in the world than she had ever been during their marriage, managed to face the situation with calm. She showed Charles the school, introduced him to some of her Lakota friends, and shared stories of the challenges and triumphs of the past. Few years. You were always the stronger one of us, he admitted as they said goodbye. You had to come to the middle of nowhere to show the world how to build something meaningful. After he left, Emily reflected on how completely her life had changed since deciding to leave Chicago. If someone had told her back then that she would find purpose and belonging in a small rural town, working with an indigenous community, she probably would have laughed at the idea. And yet, here she was, morning star to the Lakota, Emily to the residents of Clear Springs, but fundamentally the same woman who one day had chosen to open her door instead of closing it out of fear. On a particularly meaningful afternoon, Emily walked with Medicine Woman through the reforested area that had once been devastated by Clear River Mining's tractors. What 5 years earlier had been barren land now showed vibrant signs of regeneration. Young trees, flowering shrubs, the sound of birds and small animals returning to the restored habitat. "See how nature heals when we give it a chance?" Medicine Woman remarked, bending down to examine a medicinal plant that had begun to reappear naturally in the area. People are like that too. Give them a chance, and most will choose the path of healing, not destruction. Emily nodded, thinking how the same reflection applied to the relationship between the communities. What once seemed like an insurmountable divide had gradually transformed into an integrated social fabric. Still imperfect, still evolving, but undeniably healthier than the previous isolation. "Sometimes I wonder," Emily said, "what would have happened if I hadn't met Makya that day, if I hadn't decided to help him." The elder smiled, her deep wrinkles forming a map of wisdom earned over decades. "The Great Spirit puts the right people in each other's path. It was no accident Makya collapsed near your home, nor was it an accident that your heart was open to help him." In her heart, Emily knew Medicine Woman was right. There was something deeply meaningful in how those events had unfolded. as if, following a greater plan, none of them could fully grasp. As they returned to the village, now connected to the town by a well-maintained road and bilingual signs, Emily spotted a group of children, some indigenous, some not, playing together. Near the community center, among them was Amber, Makia's niece, an exceptionally bright 10-year-old girl who dreamed of becoming a doctor and combining traditional healing knowledge with modern medicine. Watching those children grow up without the ingrained prejudices of past generations, Emily felt a surge of hope for the future. Perhaps this was the greatest achievement of all. Not the projects, not the legal victories, not the national recognition, but the creation of a space where new generations could grow free from the weight of hatred and misunderstanding. That evening, during dinner at the village community house, Makia approached Emily with a small package in his hands. "This is a special gift," he said, handing her the package wrapped in leaves. "Do you remember the amulet I left for you on the first day?" Emily smiled. Of course she remembered. The amulet still held a place of honor in her home, a constant reminder of the day that had changed her life. "This is its pair," continued Makia, watching as she carefully unwrapped the object. "When a Lakota warrior makes two identical amulets, it means his destiny is tied to another person. I've kept this one with me all these years, waiting for the right moment to give it to you." Emily held the small carved object, identical to the first in every detail, feeling its symbolic weight. It wasn't just a gift. It was a declaration. "Makia, she began, unsure how to respond to such a meaningful gesture. He gently raised his hand, stopping her. "You don't need to say anything now. Among my people, we believe some connections go beyond words. Whatever path we choose, our destinies are already intertwined, like the roots of the ancient forest trees." That night, lying in bed and gazing at the two amulets side by side, Emily reflected on the extraordinary journey she'd lived since leaving Chicago. She had come seeking a fresh start, a place to heal the wounds of the past, and she had found so much more, a purpose, a community, perhaps even a new love, though that last one still felt uncertain, delicately balanced between two different cultures. The next day, as she arrived at the intercultural school for her classes, Emily was greeted with exciting news. The educational project in Clear Springs had been selected for a national award in Indigenous Education Innovation. Representatives from the Department of Education would come the following month for an official ceremony. The news spread quickly through the town and the village, bringing a wave of community pride. Even those who had initially resisted the connection with the Lakota now took pride in seeing their small community recognized nationally. "Who would have thought, huh?" remarked old Bill, the store owner, as Emily shopped. "Clear Springs on the map for something like this. Before, if anyone knew us, it was just for soybean farming. Now, we're an example for the whole country." To celebrate the achievement and prepare for the official visit, the community decided to organize a big joint event, a cultural fair that would highlight both Lakota traditions and local non-Indigenous practices, showing how they could coexist and enrich one another. The preparations for the fair kept everyone busy in the following weeks. Emily coordinated the school children's presentations, while Makia organized craft demonstrations and traditional dances. Principal Wilson, the school principal, and now a strong ally, ensured logistical support from the town. Even Mayor Thompson, who had once been hesitant, finally began recognizing the benefits of the new community dynamic and offered space and resources for the event. On the eve of the fair, as they put the finishing touches on everything, Running Bear gathered the group in the center of the main square, where colorful booths had been set up in a large circle. "5 years ago," said the elder leader, his voice carrying the weight of experience and wisdom, "our communities lived apart, divided by fear and distrust. Today, we prepare together for a celebration that honors both the past and the future we're building." This began when a woman with an open heart fed a wounded Indian and didn't close her door when many others came after. All eyes turned to Emily, whose face warmed at the public recognition. "But it wasn't just Emily," Running Bear continued. "It was each one of you who chose to give understanding a chance. It was every child who learned to look beyond differences, It was every elder who shared knowledge preserved for generations. What we've built here is like a great fishing net. Every knot matters, every connection strengthens the whole. When the day of the fair arrived, Clear Springs transformed. The small town was unrecognizable, decorated with colorful flags, and Lakota Articon visitors from neighboring towns and even nearby states began arriving early, drawn by news of the event and the national award. At the stalls spread across the central square, Lakota artisans displayed baskets, pottery, and traditional adornments, while local producers offered cheeses, sweets, and farm goods from the region. On the makeshift stage, performances alternated between Lakota dances and cultural displays typical of rural America. The Intercultural School set up a special exhibit showcasing student work, bilingual texts, medicinal herbariums combining traditional and scientific knowledge, and maps detailing the region's history before and after colonization. The highlight of the fair was a planting ceremony. In the center of the square, in a specially prepared space, Emily and Running Bear planted a young yellow ipe tree together, a native symbol of resilience and renewal. Around them, forming a large circle, school children and village elders joined hands, symbolizing the bridge between past and future. "This tree," Running Bear declared to the moved crowd, "will grow like our friendship, with deep roots and branches that stretch in all directions. May our children and our children's children sit in its shade and remember the day we chose unity over division." As night fell over Clear Springs and the celebrations continued under the stars, Emily found a quiet moment to reflect. Sitting on a bench away from the crowd, she watched the scene with a mix of joy and wonder. Lakota and non-Lakota sharing food, music, and stories, building memories that would shape the community's identity for generations. Makia approached silently and sat beside her, respecting her moment of contemplation. For a few minutes they sat in comfortable silence, absorbing the beauty of the night and the meaning of what they had built together. "I remember when I first saw you," Makia finally said. "You were in pain, afraid, trusting no one from town, but your eyes, there was something in them that made me accept your help." Emily smiled, recalling that day, which now felt so distant. "And I remember waking up to find you gone, and then seeing your whole village around my house. I'd never been so scared in my life." Makia chuckled softly. "And yet, you opened your door." "It's funny how the moments we fear the most sometimes become turning points in our lives," Emily reflected. "If I'd given in to fear that day." "But you didn't," Makia finished. "And here we are." Their eyes met, filled with all they had lived through and all they might still build. Emily felt her hand gently enclosed in Makia's, a simple yet deeply meaningful gesture between their cultures. "Here we are," she repeated, sensing those simple words held a universe of possibilities. Above them, the full moon bathed Clear Springs in silver light, silently witnessing another chapter in the extraordinary story that had begun when a lonely teacher decided to feed a wounded Lakota man and didn't close her door when her home was surrounded by many more the next day. The end of the story. Dear listener, your journey with us through Clear Springs has come to an end, but the impact of this story may live on in your heart. Leave in the comments what touched you the most and where you're following us from. Your subscription to the channel is the fuel that keeps new stories like this one coming. Thank you for your company.